Oh, do I ever have a tale to tell tonight? This is a story about it happened, you have to be a coastal dweller to understand it. And since we live in Seattle, we're all coastal dwellers. It was written for coastal dwellers. The setting is at the mouth of a huge and mighty river meeting the ocean. I will not be specific. Any resemblance to places or characters is extremely coincidental, as you will see during this story. My fellow Toastmasters, and soon-to-be Toastmasters, I would like to start the story by telling you about the three characters that are in the story, so you'll kind of understand a little bit of what's going on. First, there's Sally the salmon. Okay, now Sally is a Chinook salmon, and she is such a looker. She has this pert little nose on her snoot, you know, and when she's swimming upstream, she drives the guys to, I mean, they jump higher than they have to when they get to the fish ladders. She's that kind of gal. Okay. Then there's Skip, the skipper. Okay, and he's got his own boat, and he kind of walks around like this on his boat. And he's sort of nondescript. But the thing about him is he loves oysters. He loves them. He's an aqua farmer. He farms oysters. You can't call him a fisherman. You don't catch an oyster on a hook. He loves to grow them, smell them, look at them, feel them, hold them. Loves everything about oysters, and especially, of course, to eat them. Then you have Oscar the octopus. And I don't do a real good octopus imitation because I only got 4 limbs, but I'll try. Those are your three characters. What do they all have in common? What they have in common is serendipitous meeting, which might not have been feasible if they had been trying to do it on purpose, but their lives all came together one afternoon. It was about lunchtime. Sally, the salmon, she was swimming as fast as she could. She didn't want to miss the Saturday night spawning session. All right, she didn't want to slow down. She was hungry, but she was afraid she might get hooked anyway, and she was moving on, and she hears this voice. Water's not too deep. She says, "Hey, don't I know you?" When she looks down, and there's Oscar the octopus down there. And she says, "Well, you know, I think I know you too." He says, "You're Sally. I knew you when you were just a fingerling about 3 years ago when you were swimming out." And Sally, she says, "Yeah, I remember you too. How's it going?" Well, Oscar the octopus, I left out, is just the opposite of Sally. He drives everybody off, the girls and the boys. He's a big grouch. But boy, I tell you, his most distinguishing character was he had an eye bigger than all the other octopi. And so he responds to Sally and says, he says, "Let me tell you what. I followed," he said, "that little boat coming this way. I followed that boat, and I found out where there's a whole cloister of oysters." And there he was with an oyster in each tentacle. And he said, "It's too bad. You're a fish. You don't have any tentacles. You'll never taste an oyster because you can't break them open." Sally's a little offended, and she says, "Well, what are you talking about?" She said, "Unless you drop one, you can't open one either." He says, "Well, I'm not going to drop one." He said, "I've worked too hard for these. I'm hanging on to them." Well, about that time, we get Skip up in his boat, and he's still thinking about his breakfast, which was oyster pancakes, but he's getting ready to prepare his lunch that he eats every day. Peanut butter and jelly, an oyster sandwich. And he's shucking some oysters, and he gets one he can't get open, so he just lazily tosses it over the side. Well, it comes in the water, hits the propeller, splits open, a little morsel of an oyster floating down, lands, of course, right into Sally's jaws. So she's, of course, thrilled. And there is a moral to this story. The story ends here. All right. The moral is that a little morsel of a shucked oyster is a lot tastier than 8 non-shucked oysters all in a tentacle.